Thank you, Joe. Building on that, I want to go further into the renewables transition side of things. So Iberdrola, Avangrid, and their subsidiaries tout themselves as green companies that are environmentally friendly, yet they've spent a lot of time and money advocating against climate policy and funding front groups and misinformation against climate action. What has been your experience with this, Seth and Michelle? And are they moving your states quickly enough towards 100% renewable energy?
Michelle, you want me to kick this one off? Or do you want to?
Either way, I can. Yes,
Go
so basically no, is the short answer. So for some context, New York State passed a very comprehensive climate law in 2019, which had large goals for 70% renewable electricity by 2030 and 80% economy-wide reduction in greenhouse gases by 2050. And basically, again, from rate case documents, it's clear to see that the companies have no comprehensive plans to comply with this plan that was passed 3 years ago. And they have also yet to conduct a full greenhouse gas inventory of their actual emissions. They are not meeting targets for efficiency or heat pump programs or the requirements for the proportion of funds that go to low and moderate income customers, which are supposed to be 20%, and they're 6%. They're 4% in NYSEG. They're trying to advance false solutions with hydrogen blending projects. They also have planned, we have requirements in the climate law for 40% of climate funds to go to disadvantaged communities, and they have failed to plan for or even measure impacts on disadvantaged communities or carbon-related impacts needed for the impacts in the climate law. Additionally, they are still calling for investments in natural gas infrastructure, which of course continue to use our money to build new gas infrastructure that they know under this climate law will need to be decommissioned within 10 to 15 years. So basically they get the profits once they get to build those, and we're stranded with the costs. When it comes to lobbying and accelerating climate change, investor-owned utilities, as you mentioned, and especially Avangrid, are notorious for using ratepayer money to fund lobbies to expand their gas infrastructure and avoid the transition to consumer-owned renewables. So Avangrid is the largest energy sector donor to the New York State governor, who recently attempted to gut the 2009 climate law in favor of gas companies. So they contributed $160,000 to her through their PAC, and individual executives also had additional donations, and they are members and large funders of the Fossil Fuel Disinformation Front Group, New Yorkers for Affordable Energy, that has been trying to basically dismantle the climate law. They're also on the federal level one of Mitch McConnell's biggest election contributions to stop federal action on climate change. So pass it over to you, Seth.
Yeah, super familiar. So I actually started in the legislature in 2006, and I came in as a new state legislator asking to serve on the committee that oversees our utilities, because I did understand then that we needed our utilities to be partners in the transition, that those lines are the lifeline to a livable planet. We have to electrify, we have to drive EVs and have heat pumps and power it all with renewables, right? So I was really hoping that we would find in our utilities a partner in that transition, and a partner that was willing to share in the benefits of the transition and encourage, distributed renewables, for example, rooftop solar, right? Encourage efficiency, which after all, efficiency or not using power is the cheapest and cleanest form of power. But what I found instead was a utility, Central Maine Power, again, owned by Avangrid, even then, that was diametrically opposed to those kinds of policies, that only wanted to go green if it meant more green money for them. and was the leading opponent to rooftop solar, was the leading opponent to efficiency. I thought I would see big oil as the problem. I thought they would send lobbyists and they'd be the problem. They were nowhere to be seen because they were out doing their deregulated thing. But these lobbyists knew, and they're, the folks that hired them knew that because it's a monopoly and they have these sort of guaranteed profits, essentially, no competition at all. They don't need to run the business better. They just need to lobby more and control more of the playing board and maximize their profits that way. So we saw a lot of self-dealing, and instead of rooftop solar, instead of distributed renewables, distributed efficiency, they focused on projects that they would get to own. And a massive project was a transmission build out in this region. Other utilities in the Northeast were also building out at that time, around 2013, including Avangrid utilities. That sent our transmission rates, high voltage transmission component of our bill, it sent our transmission rates up 800% within the span of a decade. So that's all profit. There was a massive profit. I talked about 8.25% for them on the low end. For those high voltage transmission buildouts, which it turned out we didn't need, but they were building it and justifying it by opposing rooftop solar and efficiency, they got 13.99%, including the adders that FERC allowed. So they saw this incredible opportunity, and by golly, they weren't going to let anything stand in the way of it. And no, they were not going to share in the benefits of this transition. They were going to make darn sure they had it all to themselves. Similarly, they were developing another project, and it became very contentious here, to bring power from Hydro-Quebec in Canada down to the Northeast. And that involved bulldozing a very significant strip of the northern forest, the largest contiguous tract of forest in this side of the Mississippi. And it meant cutting a swath through it that was as wide as the New Jersey Turnpike, and running a big new transmission line down through there. And some people said, well, we got to do this, and I understand the value of transmission, and we do need to connect regions. But there was another line that CMP wasn't telling us about here in Maine while they were spending on ads for this project. There's another line that would have undergrounded the power through Vermont and come under Lake Champlain and under existing roadways, very responsible, put forward by a competitor, and they didn't want to talk about that. So we said, well, okay, let's at least let's have a study done of whether this will have a net greenhouse gas benefit or not. Let's have an independent study done. And they lobbied so hard against that bill, spending tens of thousands of dollars on lobbyists, because they didn't want us to know what the actual global greenhouse gas, impact of that project would be. So they were saying it was green, and it was in fact greenwashing their project. Long story short, that project was shot down by 60% of Mainers in a 60-40 vote by the people of Maine, after CMP and their partners in Quebec spent far more, I think 3 times as much as the opposition. And rather than accepting the will of the people and accepting the landslide result of that election, they decided to take it to court, and they are now suing the people of Maine. In fact, the case is being argued this week. Again, it's bounced back and forth between the courts over that particular bulldozing of the forest. So as long as it's the green of money, Central Maine Power and Avangrid and Iberdrola are very happy to go green, but they will only greenwash their projects for that purpose. And we have no other company. One other thing I want to say about this is there's no other company that lobbies to this extent here in Maine, or that astroturfs to this extent here in Maine. For the past several years, they have been spending over $1 million a month on political ads. And just to put that in perspective, Maine only has 1.3 million people. So they're basically spending $1 per Mainer per month on ads and doing it for several years on political ads. And there's also the lobbyists, there's also the lawyers at the Public Utilities Commission and the experts, many of whom are paid for by our rates. Again, the only green that Iberdrola and Avangrid care about is the color of your money.